Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Writers Chat. And this is where we like to gather together as writers, talk about writing, all things writers, for writers, and by writers. And that's how we share. It's such a great community here on Writers Chat, and we kind of love and support each other. And we're excited to see everybody here today. And if those of you that have taken the time to watch the replay, thank you. Thank you. I've noticed last week how many had watched the replay, and it was just so exciting to know that we continue to grow as writers. So we're great to see you guys today. It's great to see everybody here that's on camera. On that, I'm going to turn it over to our buddy Melissa, who's going to introduce one of our own today for a very interesting. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So Melissa, do you want to share?
Oh, you bet. As always, it's my honor to introduce my good friend and fellow writer, Rachael M. Colby. We met back in 2016, I believe, along with Norma and Jerry Jenkins Guild, when we formed a writers group out of a forum group that we gathered in called Moms by Day and Writers by Night. And we all just clicked together and hit it off. And even after many of us fell away from the guild to go do our own pursuits, we still stuck together and formed our group that we stay with. And I fondly refer to it as our mastermind group, because I know that they share the same feeling I do, that I couldn't even be where I am as a writer today without them. They're just awesome women and such encouragers, and we love and support one another. And so it's my honor to have Rachael introduce Rachel. Rachael, I cannot talk today. uh, Today to share with us about how to host an interview with ministry in mind. And so if you don't know who Rachael is, I'm going to read her bio for you. Rachael M. Colby has a heart for reconciliation and a passion to uplift those who serve in tough places. She writes to connect culture's questions with Christianity's answers, inspire faith, and motivate through articles, devotions, and poetry. She is a multi-award-winning writer with works published in compilations and online. Her article, The Integration of Oak Ridge, featured in the Oak Ridger newspaper, won the 2022 Selah Award for articles in print at the Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference. This Jamaican-born wife and mom makes her home in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. She runs on copious amounts of coffee and chocolate and a whole lot of help me Jesus. And so thank you for coming today, Rachael, and we look forward to hearing and learning from you today.
Well, thank you for having me. And I am so blessed by our mastermind group, Melissa and Norma, and by Writers Chat and all of you here. I have not had my coffee, so yeah, we'll see how this goes.
Me either.
But thank you so much for having me today. I wanted to say that, well, I started by saying that I am definitely still a novice. My meager but weighty training as far as hosting interviews consists of about 2 pages from Jerry Jenkins' nonfiction jumpstart course, one of the resources offered to his guild members, and a handful of presentations by Larry Leach, and I believe maybe 1 or 2 from Del Didway. So unlike some of those veteran journalist interviews like Del Didway, Larry Leach, and Linda Goldfarb, I'm learning as I go. So you've hosted Del on Writers Chat. Larry Leach is an amazing journalist, teacher, editor, and writers coach. Someone I hope you'll have as a speaker, by the way. And the inimitable Linda Goldfarb does her interviews via podcast, Your Best Writing Life podcast, to be specific. Other people I admire for interviewees that are like masters would be Mr. Ray Smith, City of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, historian, and coach Mark Prasick of PGNet TV, who is happy to serve writers and help them connect with people. So remember that. Between my blog, the YouTube channel, Healthy Faith Chat, which is a tri-weekly Bible-based chat in a Q&A format, I've hosted about 54 interviews, some of them featuring several people. I didn't even try and count all the pastors and pastors' wives. Many are forthcoming, including my ongoing series featuring police officers from every state in the US. I'm going a little slow on that because I'm hoping to set up a podcast, because I noticed for your information that when I include the audio file under a Zoom video interview, it gets there's quite a bit of demand for those downloads. So people are looking for audio. So if
Can
you
I
can
add
pull
that
that
real
up.
quick, Rachel? Can I add that? I have people on my blog purposely asked me for audio of my blog
Right.
each week. They are hungry for that. Everything's
Yes.
audio. Yep.
Yep. So you can, if you do your interviews via Zoom, you can provide the audio, which comes with the Zoom. Or better yet, start a podcast so people can stop and start where they want and it holds their place and all that kind of good stuff. So Anchor software, by the way, can convert your typed interviews to audio. It won't be your voice, but it's a quick way to do that if you'd like to check that out. So my interviews have included police officers, pastors' wives, and missionaries, teachers, nurses, authors, military personnel, and then my one little Angelina, my 14-year-old interviewee whose mom chose life. I hosted her as an interviewee 14 years after I took her newborn picture, and she didn't even know I'd written a prior article about her. So that was very, very special to me to be able to do that. And she is very much a voice for pro-life. So that's very encouraging. And my first interviews I did in 2016. I don't recommend you start this way. It was a 16-part series featuring, I have no idea how many pastors and pastors' wives and missionaries. And I did it over the course of just I think like maybe 3 weeks. I pulled it together. I didn't sleep for weeks. Don't do that. So you can use interviews to create journalistic news articles. Those should present the facts without interpretation or bias, according to the dictionary definition, versus opinion pieces or essays, historical accounts, profile pieces, or interview programs just featuring a specific event. Those may include opinions or interpretations, but it should be clear what is fact versus opinion, speculation, interpretation. Another reason to use interviews, because some people may go, well, I don't interview people. Well, you may need to in the future if you're a writer, because you use as research for your book or an article. Currently, I've interviewed 30 people so far, with interviews ranging from 15 minutes to 3 hours for my book on the integration of Oak Ridge. So that's a lot of hours. So, and I'm tremendously privileged that they'd share their stories with me. Some of my interviewees wear many hats. So I do provide a categories drop down on my site for interviews so people can navigate that. So some of them so it's easy to find the different categories of interviews, but also some of them wear many hats, like Mr. Ray Smith, City of Oak Ridge historian, is also a Vietnam veteran, a former police chaplain, a teacher. He's on the Tennessee Historical Commission. He's an author, and he's a very skilled interviewer. So, so much to talk about with him. My most recent interview was with authors Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith and Lori Roeleveld, and they're about their newly released book, Colorful Connections, 12 Questions About Race that Open Healthy Conversation. Excellent book. I will be posting some interview content with them in several different formats on my website. The initial interview was done on Healthy Faith Chat on Twitter. So know your why, they say, for writing, likewise for interviewing, right? My why and my common denominator for my writing and those I interview is really my bio, my mission statement, which is I have a heart for reconciliation and a passion to uplift those who serve in tough places. Hence people like pastors and teachers and police officers. I'm not just trying to disperse information with my interviews, but to bring understanding. Especially, I encourage you to remember, I try and remember when we're broaching controversial topics, remember we're trying to reach people, not just preach to the choir. A question to ask is, do our words needlessly fan the flames of division, or do they bring people together? And so for inspiration, I let the chatter on the street guide my questions sometimes, whether it's for my articles or my interviews. What is the need out there? What are people hollering about, if you will? Give people the opportunity to diffuse misconceptions, to educate and be known by being interviewed. The quote that inspired, other than God, the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit working on me, the quote that inspired my pastors' wives, and missionary series of interviews was this quote, the chatter. I wonder what the pastor does all day. All he does is write a couple sermons a week. And I was pretty angry. I knew in my heart that was not true. So I set out to educate those who held such misconstrued views as to ministers' roles and burdens, and to help equip others to better appreciate and pray for and minister to their ministers. Also, to give pastors and pastors' wives a platform to let their hearts and their voices and their needs be heard. I gave them a chance to answer people's questions that people hesitate to ask or wrongly assume the answers to. So I gave them the option, something I do pretty much all the time. I give them the option of anonymous, not anonymous, or partially anonymous. Partially anonymous means their name may go on some quotes, but it may not be on others. And so I'll bury them really good, because sometimes it's just not profitable. I don't want people throwing stones at my interviewees. I want them to be protected and ministered to. Some kind of amazing memories to me, like that quote from that person. And then when the first pastor I approached and said that was in person, and I said what I was doing and why I wanted to do it, it was very powerful. I'll never forget. He was just doing his thing in the office, and he just froze and looked at me. And it was just like, are you real? Was kind of the expression. It was just, and it made me want to weep, that he would be stunned that I'd want to know about what's involved in their ministry and would want to encourage. And the other one was at a school, and he just stopped and tipped his head to the side and was like, what? You want to do what? And I'm like, this should not be how it is. One of the quotes from the pastor's wives that blew me away, she sent me a message, and to show you the need for interviews sometimes, she said, it's the first time in over 30 years of ministry I felt like anyone asked or cared. Like, they do, but you never really get that sense. I appreciate you. Yeah, I cried when I got that. It still blows me away. So methods and resources. I mean, ask. It's a guaranteed no if you don't ask people to interview. I'm a brave chicken, so I'm always scared, but forward anyway, right? Sometimes it's a no or a wait. I've waited a year and more for an interview, for a response. But mostly, I get positive responses, even if they're hesitant at first. It's important to build trust. I have some of my interviewees from my book Work in Progress that wanted to be anonymous, but then sent me a message after I'd done a couple articles and talked to them that said they didn't need to be anonymous. It was okay. So that was pretty important to me, that they felt comfortable. So like the ways I've hosted interviews via Zoom, like I said, with offering both audio and video version. Email back and forth is another way to interview. I say back and forth because you'll probably end up getting questions from their answers or need clarification. I say my tombstone just might stay, can you please clarify that? So, so I've done in person, by phone, just audio. That's probably the most relaxed, if you will. I've conducted those on speakerphone, and I use my iPhone voice memo app and Otter AI simultaneously to record those. So, and via Healthy Faith Chat on Twitter. So interviews, like I said, could be video, could be for articles, could be written as an opinion piece, as an essay, or, just a straight information news piece, or the Q&A typed version of an interview that's typed. Do your homework. Look up interviewees before you invite them to interview. Check their website. Their social media posts are huge because sometimes those don't match the website. Talk to others, see what you're getting into as much as you can as far as what they believe and stand for. So I sent out a letter or sometimes a phone call of invitation. And when I do, I provide the links to the interviews I've done in their category prior so they can see how I've handled them. I usually ask if they would like to see the questions beforehand. And I usually ask if there's anything they want me to ask them or avoid asking them. So, any questions?
So, like, about how many questions do you prepare ahead of time? You said
Oh my
you
goodness.
have questions, or do you just?
I've done everything from, I think, 8.
Okay.
35 was my initial pastor interview questions.
Wow.
They are patient people. And for Dr. Spicer, my father-in-law's best friend, civil rights activist, that when I initially sent him questions about his other stories that started to spill out as we spoke, I sent him 37. It's very interesting to read like what he said, what he ended up writing, because I was like, wow, this is like an outline for him.
Yeah.
My questions that I sent. So
Yeah.
so
least
it varies. Pardon?
Yeah, and they were prepared then. They knew what was coming, and that had to
Yes.
build trust in you, not to
Right.
be surprised or blindsided or something, I would
Well,
think.
there is one I surprised, but I'll get to that.
Okay. And Norma asked the first thing that you do. What's the first thing you need to do? But it sounds like it's the invitation out. Is that what you need to do?
I would say research your subject first.
Okay.
I say pray first and research your subject first before you send out that invitation.
You answered that right as I hit enter. And I was like, well, now I put a question out that she's already answered. So there you go.
Okay, permissions. They kind of are a little different for researching for my book or for an article, or than for just say host a video interview like this. When I send interviewees such as pastors, police officers, or military questions beforehand, I include a permission clause like this. By participating in this interview, I consent to let Rachael M. Colby's use of the content in our conversation and my name in any work she may create without compensation. I may request to see the work before it's published. Now, I do offer the work before it's published, but I say I may request because you don't want to be ready to publish your book or your article or whatever, and your interviewee has gone off to Timbuktu for a year and a half and you can't reach them. So that's why I say I may, that they may ask. So just to cover myself.
That's such a great statement. And I know we added something, Melissa added something to the Writers Chat members Facebook page of a handout, but that might be a neat thing to share over there also, because that words of that is wonderful. I bet people that do interviews might want to steal that.
Right. Yep.
Borrow that.
Well, that's my short form for like people I'm interviewing, like we are talking now. I have a much more detailed one for my research for the book, for articles.
If you wouldn't mind sharing those, I think that'd be a valuable tool for us.
Okay, well, maybe I'll get some good critique on them too as to how to improve. That's
maybe somebody might say they do this and we have some
Right.
ongoing sharing. That would be great.
Right. Okay, so like I said, once again, I offer the option of being anonymous, not anonymous, or partially anonymous. One of my police officers and his wife, they did audio only, no video. It was necessary for the kind of work they do. So others, are full on face, video and audio, and that's wonderful too. Okay, things to do before you interview, actually, before you start your interview. Put a do not disturb note on the front door that a live interview is in progress from this time to that time, because nobody is home with me to tell people to go away. So tell the mailman to leave the package on the door, on the step. Set alarms and have a checklist that includes reset router for people who have problem Wi-Fi's. Turn on the lights on your microphone, turn off notifications on your phones, hit record if you a note to hit record if you prefer a few minutes with your guest before the recording starts. And don't accidentally hit snooze on that alarm you set, because I accidentally did that with Mr. Ray Smith and it went off 10 minutes later in the middle of our interview. So secure your dogs and cats if possible. Mine is not always possible, but anyway, give it a go. I keep my dog up here with me because if I leave him downstairs, he'll bark if anyone comes to the door. If I put him in his crate, he knows I'm home, he'll have a fit and you'll know it. So, so he's with me and I hope he stays content and doesn't try to steal the show. Anyway, ask if you can record, preferably after you hit record so permission is captured. You can tell them that beforehand. I mean, they know they're going to be recorded, but then that's captured for recording audios or videos. Be slow to speak. Write your questions on paper that emerge as your interviewee is speaking. Let them finish their thought, then ask follow-up questions. So have pen, paper, highlighters handy, even for audio and video interviews, whether it's live or recorded. Write audio timestamps of quotes from interviews as you go along to create promo material for inclusion in articles, programs, or in the case of authors to promote their like book launches or whatever. It's just a quick, if you record that timestamp of that awesome quote, you can go grab that because for your smaller items rather than trying to find it in a longer interview. I gave you the resources handout page. So just, I mean, that just has on it a microphone, Otter AI, easy to understand audio recording and transcription software for technically challenged people like myself.
Can you talk just a little bit about, I had never heard of Otter.ai. It's on the resource list, but
yes,
a little bit, what is that? I don't know anything about it.
It's an app, or you can use it online and it records the conversation and simultaneously transcribes for you. It's not a perfect transcription, but it's very simple. It's very simple to do, which I need because I'm technically challenged and, time deprived. And I just unfortunately don't have the time to learn some of the stuff that is far more advanced and able to do more, than that can. But for the sake of my book interviews, Otter's great. And it enables me, even if I print or, I have online, the imperfect transcript, it's enough for me to just tidy it up later or get the gist of what's being said. Unless the person has a very, very deep Southern accent, especially males, then sometimes it's like, forget the transcript, just use the audio. So I won't name any people. So with Otter, then it emails you a link when it's processed, and then you can download, the transcript and the audio to whatever formats, and it stores online also. Other one was Descript.com, and that is a powerful suite of audio, video transcription, recording, and editing software suitable for tech whizzes. Not me, but it is amazing. So give it a whirl if you're up for that. I use Voice Memo, which is an app on my iPad and iPhone, and I'm sure there's a Google phone version. Does not require Wi-Fi, so that's sometimes very handy. And sometimes I use that in conjunction with whatever else I'm using as a backup because life happens.
So you use both. You're using
yes, like I'll have more than one device going recording. Like I could even have Descript recording on this on my computer while I'm talking on the phone, and then have my iPhone be doing Voice Memo and talking on my phone. And I would have.
I don't want to sound stupid here, but you how do you using Zoom, Otter, and your voice memo? You're using all three?
If I'm doing Zoom does, and I upload to YouTube, that provides a transcript, so it's not necessary. So some of my interviews, like I will do via Zoom. Some of them I do just audio, no video. And then in the case of my book research, 99.9% of them are just phone conversations. So I record the phone conversations with Otter and Voice Memo. So I do it on speakerphone. So let's see. Okay. Let's see. Anything else on the resources page? Oh, Lozengers and no dairy, stuff to keep, no dairy before an interview, and have lozengers or gum on hand, which you don't chew gum during the interview, but just before. So, and let's see, well, pen, paper, highlighters, all those kind of nifty things to have beside you in case you need to write something down, so that you're not, forgetting what you need to, that follow-up question. Okay, so many say gather more information than you need for research when interviewing for research. And so I found that to be true, that even if some of the information doesn't make it into the public eye, my interviewees' words, they inform and influence what I say or don't say and how I say it. Though only a few are mentioned, many voices influenced how I handled my Selah Award winning article, The Integration of Oak Ridge. It's like I hear them in my head as I'm writing. And so when multiple interviewees are featured in one article, I weave the different perspectives throughout the article. Sometimes I place the echoed sentiments next to each other. Like, it's just the way it was. It's just the way it was. Heard that one so many times. Or I wasn't aware. And sometimes I put contrasting ones next to each other. I used both of those techniques, I believe, in part 2 of my Integration of Oak Ridge articles in their newspaper, Oak Ridge newspaper. A comment from a reader on an article featuring multiple interviewees in Q&A style that I loved. She said, I felt like I was in a room with all of them listening in on their conversation. Now, these people were interviewed entirely separately, but it still came across like that, which was my goal. So don't be afraid of silence. You may find that hard to believe that I actually am silent sometimes. Some of the best and deepest sharing comes after a pause. Some of the most, it's amazing. Some of the powerful things people say as an aside or as you're ready to go, or when you just sit there and wait and they just contemplate and then they decide to really share. Be prepared to be changed by your interviewees. It's been a humbling, heartbreaking, eye-opening, transformative experience for me. And okay, book research. Written release, the importance of permissions for book research or article research. Some publishers and publications require permission forms, some don't. I'd rather be safe than sorry. In my invite to interview, I do by participating in this interview, you agree. For my longer permission form for like my book interviewees, I've tried to avoid legalese. I hate it. All that jargon no one understands. I've made my permissions very plain, but detailed and inclusive of a wide range of uses. I don't want to have to go back and bother people. If there's a new venue or format I'd like to use their words in. So it's just good to have it all up front. One of my interviewees, sadly, has already died since I started my book research. If that happens, you may need to get permission from their family to use their content. If you don't have something, in writing or audio or some sort of permission from them. Another option, sometimes you don't need to name someone, so you could still include information without, including a name too. Okay. In addition to a document with notes and questions from each person's interview and the audio transcript, I make notes and a brief bio beside the names of each of my interviewees for my book project, who referred them, their contact information, any people they said they would try and connect me with. I create a hard copy as well as on my computer. And in the case of my Oak Ridge research, I have residents from Oak Ridge and Scarborough. And so beside each one, it says Oak Ridge and Scarborough. It's just easy to navigate because they're the two camps, if you will. And also I include the year they graduated high school, just gives me, I can quickly figure out their age and, where they fit in the history of all of this. Make sure to send your interviewees the link to your published article or video or whatever you've done with their work. Interesting twists on interviews I've done. Mr. Ray Smith, I invited him to send what he wanted me to ask. After all, he's Ray Smith. So, Mr. Smith, what do you want to talk about? Send it all to me. So Pastor Michael Duncan, pastor, author, master of the one-line sermon is that particular post on my website. It was my second time interviewing him. He was one of my first pastor interviewees. So the second time, I wanted organic answers, not contemplated ones. And besides, he's humble, and I thought he might sort of balk at what I was using to interview him with. So all my questions were based on his Twitter posts, his quotes that I'd been collecting. So I didn't break that news till he showed up. But it was a tremendous amount of fun. He's a powerful, powerful preacher, a great heart, and an author also. Ambassador Andrew Young, civil rights icon, terrifying interview, an incredible, wonderful hero, even if you don't agree with everything that he has to say or has done. We would not be where we are in America today without him. But that was, not only was that terrifying because of who it was and the setting I was in, poor Wi-Fi, out of the country. I mean, I could go on, laptop precariously perched on something, but I had to wing it because a great deal of my questions centered around a certain event, and he did not remember that event. So I found that out when we were ready to start recording. I winged most of that 1 hour interview. A wing and a prayer, right?
Wow. What did you do? How did you do that? Tell us a little bit more about that. What did
It's
you
one
do?
of those help me Jesus moments. And let his answers propel more questions from me, and just quickly started scribbling like, oh my word, now what? So, but he was amazing and gracious, and his content was wonderful.
So be flexible is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, just be prepared to be surprised sometimes. Your interviews
Yes.
may say something you're not expecting, or you may end up with, like, oh my gosh, I have to totally change this.
Yeah.
They may say, I don't want to talk about that. Or in this case, he didn't remember. So good luck. Any questions in the chat?
On the chat, it's just been people been appreciative of what's going on. I don't know if Brandy or Melissa or Norma, you got questions right off right now. You want to jump in?
Well, we did have one person ask what you thought of written interviews.
I do written interviews. That is how I started my 16-part pastor series. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I did my first Zoom interview. And pray about timing. That Zoom into that first the first Zoom interview I think I did was author Robin Farnsworth. It was so managed to roll Mother's Day, nurse, and teachers with her, between her and her sons all into one. But so I interviewed them, and then Chaplain Brad Lee, who is also an author. He's a U.S. Navy chaplain. And then I interviewed Pastor Ron Bannett and his wife Kathy. They were missionaries in Africa. And I'd wanted to interview them forever. And finally it happened. And a few months later, he died of the very unexpectedly, the last person you'd expect. I mean, former Marine, fit as anything. And so we're all that's my highest viewed ever interview, because he's got some amazing things to share about the mission field and Christianity and everything else. And Fran Preston, sometimes they take a long time. I interviewed Fran Preston. He was 102, I think, when he died last November. I posted his interview. He died in December, the week of Christmas. I posted his interview in November. It was I had actually talked to him 3 times over the course of about 3 years. And the last time it was like, this needs to be pulled together now. So, and that was quite a privilege to be able to share that, with, his loved ones.
people you find, do you find them through your reading and your homework that you do ahead of time? Do you have a wish list of on this topic? These are like, how did you find police officers in so many different states that were willing to do this? I don't tell a bit about that.
I've only interviewed so far, but I have quite a lengthy list. People have kindly volunteered them for me.
Oh.
In the case of, the local one, I did a little bit of homework, and Officer Brian Morrison is the civil rights and youth officer for Barnstable, and so that fits right in with my my book and my passion for civil rights and justice, and so it just sort of happens. I mean, I've met my first series of interviews, some of them were from our fellowship, so I knew them. Some of them were from Twitter, like Pastor Duncan. Some of them were from Healthy Faith Chat, in particular on Twitter, like Dr. Nichols. So it's varied. And then sometimes you just sort of cast your line out there when you see someone, they catch your eye with what they're saying. And sometimes someone refers them, or sometimes, you've built, somewhat of a relationship with them, whether online or in person or the community.
And,
So,
and I have cold calls. So it seems like to me you do some cold calling for these people because you're coming at them out of the thing. Any
yes.
tips on that's being the brave chicken, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I think it was my third teacher post, and I had to stay at the college with my kids at the time because they were homeschooled and they were under 16, so I wasn't allowed to leave the campus. So I parked myself up on the English department floor. So it was really fun to become friends with a couple of the English professors. And so there was one of my interviewees there. She had also taught a homeschool class for our kids, for our homeschool group. And the day I was pulling it together, I had noted that the head of nursing was also, her office was on that floor. And it was, Teacher Appreciation Month, which is in May, is also, nurses are also that month, as is our military and Mother's Day, which drives me crazy. But anyway, so I walked past her office and God's like, back up. And so I was stunned. I just turned around, knocked on her door. She was sitting in her office. I mean, this is the head of the nursing department. I mean, she's actually a nurse and she's teaching and she's the head of this department. And I just said, hey, this is what I'm doing. Would you be willing to answer a few questions? And she did. And she was so kind and gracious. So, so that was one, unexpected sort of step out and just ask. So I'm trying to thank my, in the case of Chaplain Brad Lee, I guess through Twitter and also through PJNet, I'd seen him on PJNet. So all different ways of finding people.
Rachel, now that you have many interviews under your belt, what would you recommend, or what do you think you would do differently if you had it to do all over again? I wish I knew then what I knew now idea. What would you do differently?
Okay, one thing I didn't put in here, but definitely, and I still struggle with this, is, okay, when the Billy Graham journalist called and asked to interview me, she did not say, we'd like to interview you. When might you be available sometime? She said, we'd like to interview you on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Can you do this? And I said, yes. And if I had been unable, I would have said, well, no, but I could do it at 12 or I could do it Thursday, and it would have gotten done. When you leave it open-ended, it takes forever or never. So try and say, I just had this happen with another interviewee that had taken months to talk to them. And it was like, can we talk tomorrow, please? And it happened finally. So, and it may be more than one try, and I cringe because I don't want to bother people. So that would be one thing, is to be more, concrete in my requests. And well, I guess everything takes a lot out of me, but sometimes it's kind of nice to have your questions written ahead of time if you can, even before you issue the invitation. Doesn't always happen, but if you can, it's great. The other thing is, if it's going on your website, whether as, a video or typed, and you want to have, an intro or whatever other content to go with it on the page. I don't have this down. at all, but try, if you can write that beforehand, before the interview, you feel like you've conquered the world. Because you're not like, oh, now I need to do this. What do I do? What do I say? You can always edit it out before, but at least you've got it started or almost done. Do you edit your videos? If so, what program do you use? Well, okay. Like I said, I am low tech and low budget. So a couple times I've had a couple things that needed to be edited out. I've sort of hacked my way through taking a little snippet off the front or back end of a YouTube video. I just Googled it. It's like, what's on the computer? I Googled on YouTube how to edit a YouTube video, and have taken out in the middle. One interview needed quite a bit of editing. And so someone kindly recommended the person that helped them, and they were kind enough to do that. So I am not savvy on editing programs. And I would love to have everything perfect, polished and everything, but it's going to have to be someone else probably that's going to have to do that, because I think that's kind of like not I could learn it, but that's time. And I don't think I'm ever going to be grand at it. On the other hand, other than things that really need to be edited out, sometimes I wonder if it's good for my pride and perfectionism to just go, hey, here it is. Right?
I think they make more real. It's a conversation between you and this other person. I think that is it just makes it real. It's authentic,
Right.
Yeah.
The unabridged version.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
like that. I was fascinated. Do you have a lot more to do, or could I ask another question?
no, you can, let me see. No, I have a little bit to go, but not much.
Okay, just on your handout that you gave us,
Yes.
you had an article, how to get 5 articles from one interview, and you've kind of implied that often you use it more than one place. You put it on your website and you put it on YouTube, and talk a little bit about some of the places, how you've used one interview more than one way.
Well, I mean, I have, but that article is by someone let me not kill her name here. Leilani Squires on Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers conference blog, how to get 5 articles from one interview. I included that because I thought that was an amazing article. Very, very helpful. In my case, like I said, I just conducted an interview on Healthy Faith Chat, which is a Q&A format on Twitter. So I've already copied and pasted those questions and answers, and one of my interviews sent me some of hers. And I will turn that into a Q&A post on my website as well, because it's going to reach different people, and it's going to have a longer life on my website potentially than it would on Twitter. Sometimes, and when I did the interview on Twitter, I knew I wasn't going to be able to ask all my questions, because we only do half an hour with the host, and the other 30 minutes we open to the floor. So one of my interviewees has answered some of my other questions. So I had extra questions for later. And so I guess we have to decide whether we're going to do those via Zoom or include them with, or what we're going to do. But we are planning on, possibly having a Zoom interview and, doing an article and everything. So you can do lots. It can be, like I said, Healthy Faith Chat, a Q&A article, more of a story article, like a, featured article, and audio podcast when I get there. If you have a podcast versus just including an audio file, then you're going to have more reach with people, perhaps a different audience, and you're going to get those listeners, and it's going to be a whole lot easier for them to share, and a whole lot easier for them to stop and come back to it, since that saves for you. So, and then there's always reposting or submitting to another site that'll take reprints, which I did. Like some of my viewees from my pastors are on Southern Ohio Christian Voice that were on my website. So that's another way to use your interviews in more than one place and get broader reach. So, and then, in that article, she talks about writing everything from, a how-to to a personal piece, or different things out of the one interview you've done, or which in the case of I'm writing a book, but I'm writing articles for the Oak Ridger with the information I'm collecting for the book. So anyways, let's see. Ethics in interviewing and writing. So you will bring a clearer, fuller, truer, more powerful picture if you include many perspectives. I'm trying to present perspectives from both the Black and white community, from young and old, and from different political and religious persuasions in my work in progress. I think it's essential if you really want the truth. If we hold the truth, we're responsible to let that light shine, to take it to others. What they do with it is between them and God. So speak and write the truth with humility, grace, and love, even when inconvenient. And sometimes it really is, but it's okay. Other, question to ask is, how can we reach people if we're not willing to hear them out? Talk to people you don't agree with so you can better understand where they're coming from and thus perhaps reach them. That's for life, and that's for your writing, and that's for your video, whatever you're doing, your research on whatever you're writing. Protect your interviewees from backlash if possible. Counsel them on what's wise to have their name next to. I've said to pastors and pastors' wives, did you want to say that way? Because it could be interpreted this way. Or did you want your name on this because this is the potential response you may get? Do you want that, or would you prefer to, be anonymous on that comment or whatever, and leave that up to them. Verify facts 3 times, they say, right? And it's amazing how when you chase things down, and as far as, research interviews and stuff, the reference librarian is an amazing resource, but it's amazing as you talk to different people. Sometimes I talk to several people before I actually get the actual full picture and figure out what actually happened and when it happened. So pray before your interview, then pray for your interviewees as God leads and brings them to your mind over the years. You may not know this, but if I've interviewed them, I consider them my people. So, and so I do pray for them. They're part of my heart at that point. Off the record is off the record, or anonymous and well hidden with their permission. So, and I do have interviewees go just off the record, or please don't put this out there, and I consider that a high honor that they would trust me, and, terrifying thought to ever violate that trust. So, minister. The goal, love people and minister to them. That really is my goal. Care about them. Let them know that you care about them. Build relationship. Care about the cause and about the people, not one or the other, but both, but especially the people. My interviewees are not just a means to an end. I hope to serve, to minister to both my audience and my interviewees, to represent them in truth well. Ultimately, I hope to be a light for the gospel, to treat people with dignity and respect, no matter the type of interview, the subject, the person I'm speaking to that has blessed me with the opportunity to talk to them. Amplify their voices. Jerry Jenkins says it's not about you, even when it's about you, it's about your audience. What value do you bring to your audience? Same thing applies with your interviews. The goal to bring understanding, reconciliation, healing, to bridge a divide between those who serve in their communities, to empower and support those who serve. Provide a way for those in certain fields to show who they are and their needs, so they can be better minister to, so we can better minister to those who serve. So, for example, kind of a setup here. My interviews provide participants opportunities to encourage and equip those in their field. Ministers, police officers, gleaning encouragement from each other's words, a nod of understanding, companionship, sharing their ideas and stories with each other. My law enforcement series includes and will include both Christians and non-Christians, but I invite the Christians to share their testimonies, thus providing them an opportunity to impact their fellow officers, because I figure an officer might just lend ear to an officer more than they would to me or somebody else. And then just finally, question to ask: do our words needlessly incite division or invite others to the peaceful waters of reason, resolution, and reconciliation? I had the cool thing happen the other day. I was interviewing a gentleman for my book, and his daughter was with him, and she asked a question. And she got way more than she was expecting, but just a little bit of what I shared with her. She asked, what is your best advice in terms of journalism writing? And so I share with you in closing what I said to her. I said, you've got to provide more than just dry information. We can Google most anything. People are informationed out. You've got to put a heartbeat on the page or people won't be interested. Don't just tell your audience about something or someone. I want my readers or listeners to feel like they're walking on that street, to feel the angst, the pain, the joy of the people I'm hosting, writing, or speaking about. Today, we seem to have a shortage of true journalists and a plethora of sensationalists. Never underestimate the power of a handful of words, the ability to influence lives, to shape culture. A journalist or a writer's sacred duty is to portray truth. I say portray because today many manipulate with inclusions and exclusions, and in so doing lead people to wrong conclusions. A half-truth is a lie. Words can break, bring together, or separate. That should scare and inspire us all. And so my prayer is, may we strive to use our words for good, our calling to glorify God and minister to others, to encourage faith, to be a bridge for reconciliation, to uplift those who serve in tough places, to be a voice for truth with love and positive change. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. May it be so. Oh my gosh, Rachel, that is what a beautiful overview of all the ins and outs and what powerful and what a witness interviewing can be. I mean, you've inspired us all. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I will say, even with my interviewees who are not Christians, it opens the door sometimes to share the gospel. Sometimes they ask or they say something and I'm able to share something, or they want to check out who is this person and they go on my website and there's plenty of Jesus on there. So
okay. I love it. I love it. And I also like how in some ways I love how you've picked some groups, some themes, let's say the policeman. And it's been an ongoing project. How I think that is very exciting, and I think all of us could pick an area of our niche and start interviewing just in that area. Think of the material, the ideas, the wonderful venue that could be to share the good news too. I think that is great.
It's Pastor Appreciation Month. So on that handout, I included those poems for pastors and pastors' wives for you guys to share with your ministers and encourage them. So
thank you.
I hope you'll jump on that.
Right. We've got just a couple more minutes. So any last minute questions here? And just before we go off the recording, I'm going to just tell briefly about next week too, but I'm going to look at Brandy and Norma and Melissa. Questions?
I just think Rachel did a fabulous job, very encouraging and enlightening. I'll get it right in a minute. And you've given us a lot to think about, especially what you closed with. That was really powerful.
And thanks to Madison.
A powerful reminder that as writers, we have to be careful with our words. Do we want to speak life, or do we want them to speak death or division?
Right.
So great job, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And any last minute questions from the chat, or anybody wants to come on or ask any last minute questions too as we wrap up today? Kathy, did you have a question?
I did. This is partially because of me having been in journalism before, and I had to learn the hard way to listen to people who I didn't expect were going to be interesting, and they were fabulously interesting. Rachel, did you ever have somebody who you thought, it's going to be okay, and then just was blown away by them?
Actually, I've had both happen. I've thought this person is going to have everything I need to hear on this, and they're going to be, and they haven't had a lot to share. And then I've had people that have absolutely surprised me. And I have often had in that last minute, they just throw this thing over their shoulder that's like, oh my word, like, why did you wait to say that? I can't believe you almost didn't say that.
I tell you, when I worked for the newspaper, I learned that you keep listening to, you're completely out of there. It's at that door, when I was leaving their homes at their door, as we were concluding, they said, yeah, I once did. And you thought, what? Wait a minute. Then I was like, tell me a little more about that. Can I include that? No. But I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I've had, one of my ladies who's been wonderful, she's been more a facilitator than an interviewee, but just one day she told the story and it just gives me goosebumps. And it was all of like 3 minutes. And it was just an aside. She goes, oh. And I'm like, oh my, that's gold.
So Kathy, thanks for bringing that up.
Yes,
so it reminds us to
Kathy.
be prepared, be open. Be ready for that surprise either one way or the other, doesn't it? And stuff. Well, it is after the hour. So before I officially thank Rachel again, I just want to say next week we're going to have kind of a share-a-thon. We're going to have our regular crew and of our hosts here, and everybody's going to take a few minutes to share something they wish their younger writer had known before, just a little story or lesson. And then maybe after each vignette, we'll have a little discussion about what that is and stuff. And so just kind of a share. And then, so think about that for those of you that are listening and that are here in the chat, or hopefully be with us next week. What is something you wish your younger self would have known about writing? We'll keep it focused on writing, and each of us will share a little insight and a gift and bring it back. I think, and when we reflect on each other's too, I think that's going to fill up the hour with some treasures of some wisdom. I think, at least hopefully, wisdom, or boy, I don't want to do that lessons, so we can do that too and stuff. So Rachel, thank you again.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for all your encouragement and equipping for writers. I'd also like to introduce you to my friend Riva, who's here for the first time, I believe.
Oh, is she in the
She
room?
is new to writing, and I'm so excited for how God is going to use her.
Hi, Riva.
So welcome, Riva.
I hope you join us.
Welcome.
Yeah, we'll be on in a few minutes in the after party. And so I hope some of you that are in the chat come on over on camera and we can have a conversation. There's Riva. Hi, Riva. On that, we'll have a conversation here in a few minutes. And thank you for being with us today here on Writers Chat. And it was good seeing everybody. And thank you again, Rachel, for that hour flew. The hour just flew by listening to you. It was just amazing. So thank you again. We'll see you next week on Writers Chat. Bye, everybody.